Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name is Pete and this is a 5-minute Bags of Action review of Lockout from 2012. A man wrongly convicted of conspiracy to commit espionage against the US is offered his freedom if he can rescue the president's daughter from an outer space prison taken over by violent inmates. That sounds like an excellent premise. Now, this movie is directed by Charles Mather and Stephen St. Ledger. They co-directed it. Mather, it was his first feature. Previously, he's been a cinematographer. It was also St. Ledger's first feature as well, but he's done a short film with Mather before this, and then he's gone on since this film to direct the TV series Vikings. It was written by the two directors and also Luc Besson, who had the original idea. Now, I say he had the original idea, but since this film came out, a French court has actually ruled that the film plagiarises the plot of the cult classic Escape from New York and also its sequel from Escape from LA. And if you see this movie, you will probably agree. So who's in this film? Who is in Lockout? It stars Guy Pearce in probably his first full-on action role. Maggie Grace, who you may know from the Taken movies and also from the Hurricane Heist. Peter Stormare from Fargo and John Wick 2. Lennie James, who's always great. He's obviously been in The Walking Dead and also was in Blade Runner 2049. Vincent Regan from 300 and Snow White and the Huntsman, and Joseph Gilgun from Screwed, and he plays Cassidy in Preacher. Now, I've got no idea why I hadn't watched this film before. The premise reminds me of other sci-fi action movies, of course Escape from New York as I mentioned, but also things like Fortress starring Christophe Lambert and No Escape starring Ray Liotta, and I like all those films a lot. And Guy Pearce is one of my favourite actors, thanks to LA Confidential, Iron Man 3, Memento, and Aussie crime series Jack Irish, which I love. So, I don't know why I hadn't got to this before. It's set in 2079 Washington, and it starts with an interrogation scene and some flashbacks to the lead character, Snow, being arrested. It's kind of mad to think how a film that's only 8 years old can have phone interfaces in it which already look really dated, even though it's set in their future. Now, there's plenty of action from the off with some close quarters fighting and a futuristic motorbike chase that feels like it comes from a computer game and not necessarily in a good way, I'm afraid. With the prisoners all in stasis, it feels a bit like the opening scenes of Demolition Man before we actually start to get into the main part of the story. Pearce's character Snow has a smart mouth, which is all very 90s Bruce Willis, from Die Hard or from Last Boy Scout. And of course, he's a bit like Snake Plissken himself, as you'd imagine, because they've leaned so heavily into Escape from New York. The two villains, Scottish brothers, are pretty good in their roles, and it was good to see less familiar faces. Lennie James elevates things massively with his measured performance. But in some ways, Guy Pearce's character Snow is a bit of a caricature. There's some hackneyed dialogue in here which doesn't really help. Maggie Grace, however, is very good as the president's daughter, and she pretty much steals the movie. The action is pretty good throughout the movie, and that keeps things interesting, even though you don't really have enough reason to root for Snow until really late in the movie. There is some odd editing at times too, which doesn't help with the tension. In action scenes are cut in peculiar ways. At one point, Snow headbutts someone, and then straight away he's about 40 feet away from them and holding a gun, which makes little to no sense. If you've seen Escape from New York, and you'll find this film very familiar, and it's hard not to think of it as an inferior copy. As I say, the action scenes are good, the unfamiliar car stops it feeling like another Hollywood movie. It's a French-American production, but as I say, I'm a big fan of Guy Pearce, but I can see why this didn't launch him as an action star. Then again, imagine him in a stuntman-led movie like John Wick, Atomic Blonde or Extraction, and it'll be something else. Really, this is Maggie Grace's movie, like I said. And the fact is the two of them running around together means you lack that kind of one-man army vibe of Die Hard or Under Siege, which kind of weakens things a bit. The two Scottish brothers are OTT, but they're very good. But really, the biggest problem for me with this film is it's very, very predictable, and that's what dragged it down. I had high hopes based on the premise, based on the cast, but it kind of falters along and just feels like all the component parts from lots of better movies pushed together. I did like the ending, but the film didn't quite earn it. It reminded me a bit of Interstellar in the fact that it almost went to end about 3 or 4 times. My overall feeling, this is okay, but by modern standards, there are much better action movies out there. I've got this sneaking suspicion that underneath the hood somewhere, maybe with more experienced directors, there's a much better film waiting to get out, and that's the one I wish I'd watched. I'm going to give, with all that considered, Lockout 2 bags of action out of 5. Have you seen Lockout? Do you agree with my assessment of it? Feel free to comment below or get in touch with us via email, Facebook or on Twitter. We have new episodes coming out weekly alongside our full-length podcast with my co-hosts and occasional special guests. And don't forget to give us a like and to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell for notifications.